Some friendships don't explode. They fracture. Silently. Deep beneath the surface, a fault line forms, unnoticed, until the day the ground simply gives way. You witnessed the meteoric rise. 5 boys, thrown together, who became brothers under the white-hot glare of global fame. A brotherhood forged in tour buses and screaming arenas. Or so the story went. But within that supposed fortress of camaraderie, the strongest link, the quiet connection between the charmer and the mystic, Harry Styles and Zayn Malik, began to rust. Harry once called Zayn his brother. Zayn saw Harry as the kindest heart in the storm. Then, silence. Not a bang, but a slow, suffocating fade to black. When Zayn walked away, leaving a 4-piece echo in his wake, the loudest sound wasn't the slamming door. It was the silence from the one person who seemed to understand him most. No public farewell. No explanation whispered between brothers. Just distance. An ocean of unspoken words widening between them. What seismic shift could cause such a profound break? What happens when the person you weathered the hurricane with suddenly feels like a stranger across a calm sea? Forget the polished press releases and the carefully curated narratives. We're peeling back the layers of manufactured smiles to expose the raw, aching nerve beneath. This isn't just about a boy band imploding. This is about the ghost of a friendship. About the conversations that never happened, the resentments that festered in the quiet, and the subtle daggers hidden in plain sight, missed until hindsight sharpened our view. If you've ever felt the slow, excruciating drift of a connection fading, if you've ever searched for answers in the static left behind by someone who simply vanished from your life, prepare yourself. This story carries the phantom limb pain of loss without closure. Because the chasm between Harry Styles and Zayn Malik wasn't carved by music industry politics alone. It was hollowed out by the weight of expectation, the ache of being misunderstood, and the brutal cost of outgrowing a bond that once felt like your only anchor in a world gone mad. Stay with us, as we trace the hairline cracks that became an unbridgeable divide. Act 1. The universe they built, and the cracks within. In the whirlwind's beginning, they were magnetic poles. Harry, the supernova of charm, drawing eyes and hearts with effortless grace. Zayn, the brooding moon, orbiting with quiet intensity, his voice a velvet anchor in their pop stratosphere. They weren't just bandmates, they seemed like counterweights. The extrovert finding solace in the introvert's calm, the quiet observer finding expression alongside the natural performer. They shared whispered jokes amidst the deafening roar of the crowd, a silent pact against the absurdity of it all. For a blinding moment, it was perfect. A universe built on shared dreams and survival. But fame isn't just a spotlight, it's a pressure cooker. And under that relentless heat, subtle shifts began. Unspoken. Unacknowledged. Like tectonic plates grinding miles below. It wasn't a dramatic blowout. Not yet. It started in the shadows, in the moments between the flashes. Zayn's retreat wasn't sudden, it was a slow-motion vanishing act. First, his light dimmed in interviews, his answers shorter, his gaze drifting. Then, the physical absences began to stack up. Missed appearances, skipped sessions. On stage, the vessel was there, but the pilot seemed to have ejected. Fans chalked it up to exhaustion, the crushing weight of superstardom. But anyone who's watched a loved one slowly detach recognizes the signs. It wasn't just tiredness. It was the quiet turning away. And Harry? Oh, he saw it. You can map it in the archival footage, the concerned glances that linger, the forced brightness in his own smile when Zayn seems miles away. It's the look of, remember the reports from Australia? Zayn misses a group event. Harry leaves early. Rehearsals in London? Zayn's a no-show. Harry doesn't chase. Is it anger? Or is it that primal instinct to shield yourself when you sense abandonment creeping in? Pulling back, just enough, so the eventual snap doesn't shatter you completely. This wasn't the fiery betrayal of headlines. It was the chilling quiet agony of watching someone you care about become a silhouette, right before your eyes, while the world demands you keep smiling. The pain isn't in the leaving, it's in the way of leaving. Silent. Undefined. If you've ever felt that slow, bewildering erosion of closeness, where intimacy curdles into awkwardness without a single defining fight, you understand the unique torment. It's the death by 1,000 paper cuts, leaving scars no one else can see. Act 2, the door slams shut, but the echo is silence. March 25, 2015. the day the carefully constructed One Direction universe cracked open. Zayn Malik officially leaves the band. The statement is meticulously crafted, a desire for normalcy, gratitude for the journey. Standard industry procedure. But amidst the global shockwaves and the flood of fan grief, one reaction stood out for its stark absence. Liam, Lewis, Neil. They tweeted messages of support, bittersweet farewells. Standard bandmate procedure. From Harry Styles. Crickets. Deafening silence. No public acknowledgement. No carefully worded tweet. Nothing. In the noisy aftermath of the split, Harry's silence wasn't just quiet, it roared. It felt less like oversight, and more like a deliberate statement. Have you ever been ghosted? Not by a casual acquaintance, but by someone woven into the fabric of your life? Then you know, that silence isn't empty space. It's a message in itself. It speaks of wounds too deep, betrayals too sharp, or perhaps a confusion so profound, words fail entirely. Then came Zayn's later interviews, dropping bombshells that seemed to rewrite history. To be honest, I never really spoke to Harry even when I was in the band, he'd claim. A statement that sent ripples through a fandom that had documented years of apparent closeness. Was it revisionism born of hurt? Or a truth hidden behind the curtain all along? That was the moment the narrative shifted. This wasn't just a band member leaving for a solo career. This was personal. This suggested a fundamental disconnect, a fracture that predated the final walkout. It wasn't just leaving the stage, it was leaving behind the people who shared. But here's where the story takes its first sharp turn. What if Harry's silence wasn't anger, but protection? What if Zayn's distance wasn't callousness, but self-preservation? The most revealing clues wouldn't come from interviews or press releases. They were hidden elsewhere. Waiting. Act 3, Whispers in the Melody. When words fail, music speaks. When the heart is too full or too broken for direct conversation, artists often turn to their craft. Music becomes the confessional booth, the diary entry set to a beat. And in the years following the split, both Harry Styles and Zayn Malik didn't just release songs. They released coded messages, emotional flares sent up from separate islands. Consider Zayn's solo debut, Pillow Talk. A sonic bombshell, worlds away from 1D's anthems. Steamy, atmospheric, aggressive. On the surface, it's pure lust and conflict in a relationship. But listen deeper. It's our paradise and it's our war zone. For fans still reeling from the band's rupture, did this sound like a man torn? Caught between the intoxicating highs of his past life and the brutal, messy fight for his own identity? A declaration of independence soaked in the gasoline of burned bridges. Then there's Harry. His solo work arrived steeped in rock classicism and vulnerability. Take Ever Since New York, from his debut album. A melancholic reflection on receiving difficult news, on grappling with an absence that echoes. Tell me something I don't already know. Brooklyn saw me, empty at the news. He never names names, never points fingers. That's Harry's way. But pain resonates. For those who tracked the timeline, who felt the tremor of Zayn's departure, the lyrics felt less like romantic lament and more like the chronica of a brotherhood's end. The hollow ache of being left behind. And perhaps most telling, the closing track of his album Fine Line, We'll Be Alright. Not I'll Be Alright. We'll. Even in the aftermath, in his own narrative of survival, a space seemed implicitly held for someone else. A ghost limb of connection still twitching. This isn't just pop star navel-gazing. It's two people processing the same ending from opposite shores. One running, needing to redefine himself outside the shadow of the past. The other standing still, remembering, perhaps trying to reconcile the past with the present. And if you've ever been the one left standing, replaying memories while the other person seems to have hit delete, you know this specific brand of grief. It's a lonely vigil for a shared history that only you seem to be tending. Act 4, The Ghost of What Was, A Crack in the Silence. Years spool out. Solo careers flourish. The dust seems to settle. Harry ascends to stratospheric heights, a global icon redefined. Zayn explores his own musical path, often shrouded in privacy. The narrative seems closed. Then comes the 2022 Grammys. Harry Styles wins Album of the Year for Harry's House. The pinnacle. He stands on stage, awash in applause, visibly overwhelmed. It's a moment of pure triumph. Yet, in interviews surrounding that peak, a familiar melancholy surfaces. He speaks of wishing certain people could have been there to share it. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. The implication hangs heavy in the air. The ghosts of friendships past still occupy prime real estate. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, something shifts. Zayn Malik, notoriously private, rarely referencing his 1D past, posts a video online. No fanfare, no context. Just him, singing an acoustic, soulful rendition of One Direction's Night Changes. The song choice is poignant, a ballad about time slipping away, about moments that become memories. The timing? Suspiciously close to Harry's Grammy reflections. The internet ignites. Was it an olive branch? A moment of nostalgia? Or something more complex, a quiet acknowledgement across the chasm? For fans who'd lived through the silence, this unexpected note felt monumental. It wasn't closure, not even close. But it was something. A flicker in the darkness. Perhaps the most painful message isn't outright anger, but the quiet, devastating whisper, "I remember it too." It solidified the feeling. This wasn't just a professional split. It was the unresolved ending of a significant relationship, a love story, platonic or otherwise, left hanging mid-sentence. But maybe we've been looking at the two of them for answers, when the real story lies in the forces around them. Act 5, The Invisible Enemy. Was it ever about them? We've traced the silence, the songs, the subtle gestures. It paints a picture of two friends tragically adrift. One walking away, the other left wounded and quiet. Simple, right? But what if that's the wrong frame entirely? What if the fracture wasn't caused by a failure between Harry and Zayn, but by the relentless, crushing pressure around them? Consider the crucible of modern manufactured fame. One Direction wasn't just a band. It was a global multi-million-dollar brand. A machine meticulously designed to maximize exposure, profit, and control. And within that machine, 5 teenagers navigating puberty, identity, and unimaginable pressure under a microscope. Think about the narratives often subtly pushed: the leader, the funny one, the mysterious one, the charming one, the sensible one. Labels that flatten complex individuals into marketable archetypes. Was Zayn's desire for normalcy or creative control seen as rebellion against the brand? Was Harry's adaptability and ease in the spotlight inadvertently positioning him as the golden boy, creating unspoken tensions? This offers a different, perhaps more tragic perspective. Zayn wasn't necessarily the villain abandoning his brothers. Maybe he was the canary in the coal mine, suffocated by the control, the lack of authentic expression, the sheer exhaustion of playing a role. His departure wasn't just leaving the band. It was a desperate escape hatch from a gilded cage. And Harry? Perhaps not the aloof star unmoved by the departure, but the one left holding the fragile pieces, trying to navigate the emotional wreckage while the machine demanded the show go on. His silence, then, might not have been coldness, but a shield. Or maybe, just maybe, the only response possible when the rules of the game prevent you from truly speaking your heart. They didn't necessarily fail each other. Perhaps the system failed them. A system that prioritized profit over personal well-being, branding over brotherhood, and narrative control over authentic connection. They weren't allowed to grow and change together. They were forced into lanes that ultimately led them miles apart. If you've ever lost someone dear, not to malice, but to the relentless impersonal forces of life, distance, circumstance, diverging paths, then you understand this deeper, more helpless kind of heartbreak. It's the sorrow of what if, the pain of knowing things might have been different, if only the world had let them be. Zayn once reflected, "We went through experiences that nobody else can relate to. That connection will always be there." He acknowledged the bond, even as he admitted, certain things just don't get said. And Harry's continued quiet on the specifics? Maybe it's not erasure. Maybe it's reverence for something too complex, too painful, or too precious to dissect for public consumption. Sometimes, silence is the only sanctuary left for a feeling that words can no longer contain. Act 6, The Echo in Your Own Life. More than just a headline. You clicked on this video wanting to understand the rift between two global superstars. Harry Styles, Zayn Malik. One Direction. The headlines, the drama, the music. But perhaps, listening to this story, you didn't just hear about them. Perhaps you heard the echo of a different silence in your own life. A name that sits heavy in your contacts list, uncalled. A message thread ending abruptly, years ago. A friendship that didn't crash and burn, but simply evaporated. We're taught that the most brutal endings are loud, the arguments, the slammed doors, the final cutting words. But is that really true? Or do the quiet fade-outs, the relationships that drift into the fog without explanation, leave the deepest, most persistent ache, the haunting ambiguity, the endless loop of what-ifs, the phantom limb pain of a connection severed without the clean cut of closure? That's the pain point this story taps into. Because it's not confined to celebrities under stadium lights. It's deeply, universally human. Maybe the saga of Harry and Zayn resonates so profoundly because it mirrors our own unresolved goodbyes. The friends we outgrew, or who outgrew us. The bonds strained by circumstance, misunderstanding, or simply the slow, inevitable drift of time and change. So now, the question isn't just about them. It's about you. Have you navigated the bewildering silence of a friendship's end? Did that quiet fading hurt more, linger longer, than a definitive fiery conclusion? Let's make this space about more than just fandom theories. Let's talk about that uniquely human ache. Share your story, respectfully, honestly, in the comments below. Not just for engagement, but for connection. Maybe in sharing, we find understanding. Maybe we realize we're not alone in carrying these quiet griefs. And if this story touched that place in you, consider sharing this video. Share it with someone who might understand, someone who's also holding onto the echo of a silent goodbye. Because some stories don't need an ending to be powerful. They just need to be heard, acknowledged, and shared. The conversation doesn't end here. Let it begin.